Not that long ago, reality was understood as a mechanical closed system in which everything has its place, and as such could be located, defined, and reduced to a more fundamental and real mechanism that determines it. But today, this picture of the world is shattered. The natural sciences recently showed that there is no such thing as an absolute space, which means that we can't locate objects in space from God's point of view. That the universe is expanding and dying, meaning that it is not ordered, but free. That physical reality is not solid, but solidified when energy is displaced. That reality on the quantum level is ambiguous, uncertain, and probabilistic. And that natural process displaced and will keep displacing the surface of the earth, water, and organisms. Moreover, the social sciences showed how imperialism, globalism, and radical technological advances in modernity displaced human beings, non-human animals, natural resources, and viruses. Any crisis and war across history displaced indigenous people, money, ideas, artifacts, and natural resources, and in modernity, these practices were rationalized and normalized. What all of this means is that our physical, mental, and political and social environments are constantly shifting. How should we then live in the 21st century with the acknowledgement that there are no borders, limits that can define us and the world around us? How can we determine what the truth is if everything is fluid? The issue with these anxieties, uncertainties, is that they are based on misguided understandings. The dichotomies between permanence and change, objectivism and relativism, rationalism and empiricism, and progression and regression that motivated science, philosophy, art, and religion can no longer hold, since both nature and culture are constantly reconstituted. We don't have mediated or immediate access to reality, since we are always oriented towards discovering new truths rather than being determined by the truth or created in our minds. As Husserl and his followers argued, we are primordially always already displaced. We are never really in the present and with other beings, but projecting ourselves toward them. This means that rather than ordering the world for us, abstracted rational knowledge is out of place, so to speak. One can stay put and still be displaced, since man is not a spatio-temporal object, but dispersed in a field of meanings, as Heidegger argued in Being and Time. This means that we are not centered in a world, but decentered in it, since we are always already responding to what we experience, expressing our being toward other beings, and we can discover the reasons for responding the way we do by being involved with them rather than withdrawn from them. When we pay attention to the way we actually experience the world, we can't help but constantly experience a displacement, even when we are not physically changing our position in space. Our memories, desires, imagination, and dreams displace us to the past, future, the possible, and the fantastic, and other people displace us when we love and hate them, or when we are empathic toward them. Nevertheless, political orders or any kind of human order rejects any mode of displacement, since putting things in order is the most compulsive expression of human freedom. The natural world, which man is part of, is what it is. It can't be changed, but the cultural world can be ordered and determined by man. The world determines our knowledge. We are passive when we try to know it, but when we take action, we make the world. This means that with the use of reason, human beings can resist any kind of displacement and instead place themselves physically, mentally, historically, and politically in order to rule their bodies, minds, spirits, natural resources, and territories, to control. The freedom to order the human world rather than being ordered by the natural world is then an attempt to be a god on earth. But any god demands sacrifices when its identity, truth, and authority are being questioned. Any order that is shaken demands the use of force in order to maintain harmony to the point that life becomes instrumental and merely oscillates between forms of displacements and placements. Therefore, during an existential crisis, we should search for ways in which we could be displaced in meaningful ways in order to set ourselves free, instead of searching for order and harmony in order to be placed again physically and spiritually. This is what Charlie Kaufman's characters secretly desire, but can't fulfill since they are too busy trying to find their place in the world. And as such, the different modes of displacement they are going through cause them distress, rather than being a platform for their freedom. In his film Anomalisa, he shows that by being empathic, one can see the other from her or his point of view. The film follows the love affair of Michael and Lisa that takes place in a hotel during Michael's book promotion tour. Everyone in Michael's life looks and sounds the same, but that all changes when he meets Lisa, who has a unique voice and look. Because Lisa is a shy woman, Michael's interest in her becomes a significant moment in her life. She is finally seen by someone else for who she really is. But at some point, he sees her like everyone else and stops loving her. His love affair with Lisa ignites in Michael the desire to be seen and loved by others, to ask for empathy because he learned that in order to see people in their authenticity, he also has to let them see him. He has to expose himself, to expose his own truth. This is more problematic in the case of romantic love, since romantic lovers see themselves in the other, which in return makes them hate themselves, as Kaufman's film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind illustrates. This is why after Joel and Clementine, the couple in the film, broke up, they tried to forget their shared memories. They wanted to become someone else, to be in a different place, so to speak, in the future, because their shared memories kept displacing them to their traumatic past. In Synecdoche, New York, a theater director named Caden is constantly displacing his life, since he is too busy narrating it rather than living it. First-person narration is a type of displacement, since it involves purposeful self-referencing. Caden tries to piece together all the moments of his life into a whole, but each part of it ends up representing the whole, since any attempt to reduce a man's life to something abstract like a play or a theory is doomed to fail. His error was that he used meta-narrative rather than dialectics. When consciousness became self-consciousness, the only way to stop it from infinitely regressing is to posit an impersonal point of departure, a logos that drives reality toward an end, a whole. But this also wouldn't have helped him to overcome his desperation, since again, any moment in a man's life is already meaningful, an end in itself rather than a means to an end. This means that by using meta-language and being ironic, Caden was actually trying to flee from meaning rather than discovering it, the same way other characters in postmodern films, plays, and books do. Postmodern practices involves meaningless displacement out of the conviction that behind any fiction, lie, there's no meaning, truth, but only another fiction, lie, since reality is already a fiction, something we create in our minds. Admiration and jealousy is also a form of displacement, as Kaufman's film Being John Malkovich, an adaptation, illustrate. One wants to become like other more successful and famous people and live their lives, so she or he imagines being them. And above all, Kaufman as an artist, as a creator of new beginnings, shows that one's imagination, representing something that doesn't exist yet or can never exist, is the most hopeful form of displacement. But eventually, it doesn't work, neither for him nor his characters. His characters are depressed from the beginning, and stay that way up until the end, since they live in corporate America, where it is not easy to go through a meaningful displacement by being loved in a caring way, by opening politics to a new meaning, or by making authentic art, since any aspect of life is a means to an end, rather than an end in itself. In corporate America, citizens need to participate in rigged formal democratic procedures if they want to change their societies, to be loved in a possessive way if they don't want to be alone, and create art that is meant to be sold to the highest bidder if they want to do something they love. Kaufman's characters are begging for empathy from the audience, since they are reduced to cogs in a machine that no longer needs them in order to function. Instead of having meaningful lives, they keep dreaming of being successful, rich, and famous, so they can be placed in people's awareness and be a part of the machine. And if they realize they can't fulfill these pursuits, they feel that they must at least be desired and useful, since it is the only way they can be seen in the first place. But since none of this will ever be enough for them, they will probably die in despair, and then be placed in the ground forever, as Jake, the male protagonist in Kaufman's latest film, I Am Thinking of Ending Things, did.